Hey there, my name's Rod Yates and you're listening to Humans of Music, a Jaxsta podcast. This is where I talk to music creators and industry professionals about their lives and careers, the ups and downs of their journey and the lessons they've learned along the way. And my guest today is Melanie C. At the age of 22, Melanie Chisholm experienced the kind of fame you just couldn't prepare for. Known around the world as Sporty Spice, for a period of time she was one of the most famous people in the world in one of the most popular groups in history, the Spice Girls. For a working class girl from the northwest of England, the success, the money and the pressure were a lot to take in. At the height of the band's fame, Melanie developed an eating disorder and battled depression. And as she says in this interview, it's hard to quantify exactly how the experience of being so famous at such a young age changed her. In some ways, it's hard to believe the Spice Girls only existed as the original 5 members for less than 2 years. Such was the scale of their success and legacy. And while they've reformed a few times over the years, the most recent being for a tour in 2019, Melanie has been a solo artist for more than 20 years and for much of that time as an independent artist. She has a new album due this year from which she's released a couple of early singles, and one of those songs is called Who I Am. It's an anthem of self-acceptance in which Melanie sings, "When I look in the mirror, I finally like what I see." Now, before we talk about that lyric, a word of warning. Home internet being what it is in this COVID age means that on occasion the line gets a bit glitchy. But I hope you can put up with that because Melanie is a really wonderful guest, and here she is talking about that line in the song Who I Am and at what point she became comfortable with the person she sees in the mirror.
I think it's been work in progress for many years, and in all honesty, I think it will always be work in progress, But last year, when I was on stage with the Spice Girls, it made me feel really reflective because I felt very nervous about going back into that environment and becoming Sporty Spice. And I quickly realised that I don't become her, I am her. It's a huge part of me. It's within me. And it just made me start thinking about all of the, different times in my life, my personal life, my career, different things I've been through. And I just thought, wow, I'm 46 now, 46 years young. And I just thought it really is time to accept all of those things and realize that they are all part of who I am. And then quite quickly after the Spice Girls tour in 2019, I went on the road with Sync the Pink, who are an incredible creative collective. And I had 5 drag queens touring the world, performing at Pride. And it was so wonderful to really celebrate the LGBTQ plus community and spending time very closely with members of that community almost added this extra layer because hearing people's stories and people's challenges through growing up, whatever their differences are, it just made me realize that, wow, it's time for me to truly accept myself, even the parts of myself I may not like that much.
Right.
It's me. And I think in life, we always celebrate our successes, but the things we don't tend to celebrate enough are how we've overcome challenges. And I think they're the things that really make us. And yeah, I've just been doing a lot of thinking and it brought me to this point. And I wanted to get it down. I wanted to get it out, and that's why this album really is, I hope it's empowering for people because it's empowered me.
So it sounds like it was almost quite healing then, that Spice Girls tour?
It really was. I think it was an eye-opener in so many ways, not only personally for me, I think between us, the relationships with the girls, remembering how incredible our work is, at the heart of it, the songs are brilliant and to perform them again was so special. And then the audiences, it was something we weren't kind of prepared for, the energy, the enthusiasm, the atmosphere. We had a great production. The creative was amazing. We were so happy with everything. And then the audiences came and they just took it to another stratosphere. So it really couldn't have been any better. It was an incredible experience.
And there's another line in Who I Am, which is, "I'm ready to drop my armor." When did you develop that armor?
Oh, I think we all develop it over time, don't we? I look at my daughter now, she's 11, and I remember when she was very little and was really not influenced by anything. You know, she was just so purely herself, using her intuition, and watching her grow. And now she's a preteen, and social media's around, and all of these things. And it's just interesting how we all become influenced, not only by the people around us, by our environment, whatever's going on in the world, our friends. And yeah, again, made me start to think about, when did I kind of feel like I lost the essence of who I am? When did I feel like I had to fit into a mold, or I had to hide parts of myself? And I just think it's something you develop, and a lot of it is for survival, and I think especially when you're in the public eye, you feel like you have to have a barrier, because otherwise you're way too vulnerable. So that's been an ongoing thing, that it's empowering to be able to drop it. It's liberating to let go and go, you know what, this is me, and that's okay.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned the essence of you. When you think back to when you're at the age of your daughter now, what kind of kid were you back then?
I was confident, and I've always had a shy side, but I think I felt I was confident in, obviously in those environments where I felt comfortable. I've always loved performing. When I was at dance classes or at drama rehearsals, in music, all of those areas with people I had shared interests with, and I was very ambitious and very determined, and I think I was quite confident in my ability. I knew what I wanted to do. And it's amazing looking back how, you can be so single-minded in what you want to do. And then it's really as you get older when some of the insecurities begin to creep in.
Where did that single-mindedness come from? Like, where did you get the ambition from? Was there someone in your life that you sort of saw that had an influence on you like that?
Well, my mum's a singer, and I grew up in a household where there was always musicians, there were rehearsing, I'd be dragged along to gigs, and, when I was very little, and I kind of took it over granted. And it wasn't really until I became an adult that I realised, I knew when I was growing up that my experience was very different to a lot of my friends. So when I got older, I began to really appreciate that, because when you're a kid, all you know is what you know, isn't it? It just is. So now I feel very lucky, but I've always felt like it's a very personal thing to me, even though my mum and I share a love of music and a passion for singing. It's, my journey's very much been a personal one.
Okay. What do you remember of seeing your mum sing? Because she had a record deal in the 70s, if I'm correct.
She did.
So she was obviously very serious about that career. What do you remember of those gigs?
Absolutely. I just always remember being really proud, because my mum was really glamorous. She'd get really dressed up, and she'd be up on stage and everyone was looking at her. And I just thought my mum's cool, which she was, and she still is. My mum's incredible. She's 71 and she's still out there. She's still gigging and still performing to this day. So she's a big inspiration.
So she obviously didn't pursue it as a career. Did she work in the NHS, or does she work in the NHS?
Yeah, she still works for the NHS, actually. She's when we were growing up, my mum was signed to Decca Records in the 70s with a band called Petticoat and Vine. Or was it Love Potion? No, maybe it was Petticoat. I can't remember. There was a couple of bands.
Right.
So so she's been in numerous bands over the years, but when things didn't really work out, and she wasn't lucky enough to have the success like I've had, she still had to put food on the table. So she worked full time and gigged. I mean, sometimes she'd gig Thursday, Friday, Saturday night. She was kind of working two jobs. So that in itself was very inspiring to me. I'm from a working class background, so everyone's always had to work very hard, really to make ends meet. So I think growing up in that environment, gives you a good work ethic.
Yeah, and your stepdad played bass in the band as well, is that right?
He's a bass player. I mean, he was also signed. I think he was signed in the 60s. He was in a band called The Addicts, and he used to play on the Cavern. He was, often on the bill with the Beatles. So, so it's that real, Liverpool music heritage that, that's so nice to have a little insight into.
So I think you were about 3 when your biological father and your mum divorced. What impact, I mean, it's very hard to say what impact that would have as a 3-year-old, but as you became older, what impact did that have on you, do you think?
I think that it's impossible for any child to not be affected by their parents splitting up. It's natural as a child to want your parents to be together and to be with them both all of the time. It did happen to me when I was very young. So growing up, it didn't seem that different to me. It felt that was my normal. But my friends all had parents who were together. So sometimes it made me feel like the odd one out. And I think especially kind of getting towards those teenage years when you really start to question things, sometimes I felt like I didn't really belong anywhere. My mum remarried, my dad remarried. They both went on to have more children. And I'm an only child from my mum and dad. So I think that did affect me growing up. I think it made me really determined to succeed. I think I kind of felt like I needed to find my own place in the world because the family that I was from was no longer there.
And did you find that family in dance? People that in dance school and just the art of dance?
Yeah, it's interesting because, I've maintained a great relationship with both my mum and dad and spent lots of time with them both growing up. I never felt like I was starved of any attention from either of my parents. But it was just an interesting, thing to just feel like a bit of a spare part sometimes. So I think that made me, really throw myself into my performing and into my passions. And it's quite intense. I think being a performer and being creative when you are with like-minded people, it makes those relationships quite intense. And, my friends today, my friends from being a child are the friends I danced and performed with. So yeah, they kind of do become a family. I think often, especially it makes me think about working in theatre, or working on a production, working on a tour, as a musician, you're living in each other's pockets and it does become a bit of a family unit. Yeah.
Yeah. When was your very first performance? Like very first time on stage?
Very, very first performance. I think I was about 2 or 3 and I did a tap dance. There's a little glimmer of some kind of memory and it's probably more that my mum's reminded me. But we were singing a song called I Do Like to Be Beside the Seaside. Yeah. I don't know if you know that song.
I know that song,
yeah. But I started like really taking my performing seriously or knowing I wanted it as a career when I was about 8 years old. I started going to dance classes and taking it a bit more seriously.
Yeah. And when you went to dance college in Kent, had you finished high school at that point? Did you actually graduate high school and then go on to that college?
Yeah. I did my GCSEs, which are the exams here. And then at 16, left school at the school leaving age and started a college 3-year diploma in performing arts.
Yeah. What was it? Because you had to move to Kent to do that. Is that right? So I guess you had to move away from the family unit.
I moved a long way. Yeah. So I moved, I left home when I was 16. And at the time, I was so excited to embark on this life that I dreamt of. And I was in Kent, very close to London, where all of the action as a performer, that's where everything's happening. So that was a really exciting time, probably terrifying for my parents. Being a parent now, I'm like, there's no way my daughter's leaving home at 16. But the problem is now, kids can't afford to leave home at 16. So that's never going to happen. But I do feel like it's very, very young. But we were looked after and we were put with families until we were 18 and like kind of old enough to really take care of ourselves. But it's incredible. It's super young to leave home. But because I was pursuing a career, especially because I was looking at becoming a dancer, it's a very youthful career. So you can't wait until you're ready. You've just got to go for it,
Yeah. Do you think of any lessons that you learned during that period, which have stuck with you to this day?
That's a good question. No one's ever asked me that question. Well, I suppose I had to learn, especially when we ventured out. I think I was 17 actually. We were supposed to be 18, but I was 17 when I kind of went into accommodation with a friend where we were like literally, without, parental figures, and just things like dealing with the like telecom company, and my mum had been great, but she taught me things like how to cook. She was really good, all those life skills, how to do your washing, separate your whites from your colours, all those things that you need to learn. But things like, dealing with like the gas bill and the TV license and stuff like that. So that was all those responsibilities as an adult that you don't, as a kid, you're dying to grow up, aren't you? And then when you become an adult, you're like, trust me, stay a kid as long as you can, because there's a lot of boring stuff you got to deal with.
And so you were headed for the West End. Was that where you saw yourself after you graduated?
Yeah, my ultimate dream always was to work in music. And it's funny because I think I was looking through some old, memorabilia, not memorabilia, but bits and pieces of, memories of growing up and being a kid. And there was like this thing, I suppose it was like a leavers book that we did from college. And I'd said like my ultimate dream was to become a recording artist. And I didn't realize I'd said that. But I knew I wanted to work in music. I always wanted to sing. But because I'd seen how difficult it was through my mum's experiences, I thought, I have to be realistic that may never happen. So, I was lucky enough to be accepted into a fantastic performing arts college, and I love dancing. And I just thought, well, if I can't work in music, I'll work in the West End. And I was like, a little bit naive, because to get a part in the West End it's super competitive. It's it's really, really tough out there. So that was the direction I'd taken. But when I left college and started auditioning, I realized how tough it is. I got callbacks, but I was lucky enough to get a callback for a girl band, which kind of cut my theatre aspirations quite short.
But you did get to the West End eventually. Was it Blood Brothers that you did 2009 or so?
Yeah, so it was 2009. My little girl I think she was 7 months old when I did my opening night. And it was amazing because it was almost like I'd come full circle, It was really nice because leaving the Northwest and moving down to college in Kent, and we go up to London to Theatreland every weekend. We'd be buying ballet shoes and doing all those things, and I just used to soak up that atmosphere and walk past all the theatres, and we'd go to see so many shows and ballets, and all as part of the course. And, it was so magical to be there. But then to be working in the West End in 2009, so many years later,
That's right.
was just, it was incredible. And it was such a great experience. And it made me realise how hard people work in theatre. And, don't get me wrong, working in the music industry, it's bloody hard work. And you're travelling, and it can be exhausting with promo and, shows and touring and everything. But nothing's as tough as 8 shows a week. Nothing.
Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
It's that responsibility, the responsibility of being on stage, being on your A game, night after night, sometimes 2 shows a day. It's grueling. It really is.
After the break, Melanie talks about her journey with the Spice Girls, dealing with their incredible level of fame and how the experience changed her. Welcome back to Humans of Music and my interview with Melanie C. As a performer fresh out of dance college, Melanie had her sights set on a career in London's West End. That all changed the day she learned about a girl group that was being put together, and we pick up the conversation talking about that moment.
I was at an audition in London, and it's funny because the dance studio is still there. I still rehearse there sometimes, so to go back, it always brings back the memory. And I was in the cafe with a friend, and I was handed a flyer, and it said, "Are you between 18 and 24, and are you fun, outgoing, love to sing, love to dance?" And it was for a girl band. The advert was also in the stage newspaper, but I was actually handed a flyer. That was how I got to know about it. And I turned to my friend and I just said, "That's it. That's what I'm going to do." And there's a few twists and turns, But then eventually it became the Spice Girls, and yeah, I did it.
Yeah. What was the audition process like?
Like so many auditions, big line of girls, all waiting to be seen. We went in groups, I think groups of maybe about 20, a big sweaty dance studio in the heart of London. And the first thing we had to do was just dance. We just had to freestyle to like some music. I think it was Eternal, the pop group Eternal. I think it was one of their songs we had to dance to. And then, obviously they were just looking at girls, what they looked like, how they moved. And then if you were asked to stay behind, and then you were asked to sing. So then I sang, I had my sheet music, and I sang I'm So Excited, Pointer Sisters.
Yeah.
I think I sang it because it was the only thing I had sheet music to, because it was something my mum used to perform. And I sang that, and then I was asked to come back a week later. Unfortunately, I was ill. I was having terrible tonsillitis at the time, so I couldn't speak. So I couldn't make the second audition, and I missed out. My mum called them up and said, please give Melanie a week to recover, and she really wants to come and sing for you guys. And they were like, no, sorry, we've chosen the girls now, And I just thought, oh well, it wasn't meant to be. And then another, maybe a couple of weeks later, I got a phone call to say one of the girls hadn't worked out and they would like to see me again. And from that day, I was in the band.
That was
and Mel B was there, Jerry was there, Victoria was there, and a girl called Michelle. So it still wasn't the 5 Spice Girls that everybody became to know.
And when did you get an inkling that this was going to be something big? I mean, was it from the moment that you were accepted into the band? Did you see what the plans were, and did you just know that this is going to be something big? Your life is about to change?
Well, it happened quite quickly, and I think it was more to do with the dynamic of the people that were involved. And we were so ambitious and so determined to succeed, and we all wanted the same thing. And I think that's really powerful. But it wasn't really until Emma became part of the band that it felt like we had something very special. It was so strange. Michelle was a lovely girl, but she was a little bit undecided. She was looking at going to university, so she didn't know whether she wanted to commit to the band. But the other 4 of us were so committed that just wasn't going to wash.
Yeah.
So, she moved on, and Emma came into the band, and she felt the same as the other 4 of us. And just, whatever that was, that little piece of magic, that, the way we just fit together was so different. But all of our strengths and weaknesses and just how it all comes together, it has this magical energy, which is the Spice Girls, And it was really from that day, from when we started working together, that 5-piece, that we knew we had something really special, and we were never gonna give up. We were definitely determined to make it all happen.
Yeah, and because I think you were about 22 at the time. Did you have anyone coaching you in terms of, this is what's going to happen, this is how you prepare yourself for that spotlight? These are the tools you can use to get through it. Was there anyone employed or to help you with that?
No, not in the slightest. We were really driven, and, obviously we were so lucky. We were introduced to great people. We were in incredible creative environments, working with great songwriters, producers. We were signed by Virgin Records. So we had all of these like really wonderful, experienced music industry people around us from so many different parts of the industry. But at the time, there was nobody there to check in on us, to make sure we were okay, that we were dealing with it all, or coping, or to prepare us. I mean, what can prepare you? I don't know whether you can be prepared for what happened to us. It was quite unique in many ways, but I think there really should be some kind of emotional support for young artists in that way, because your life is turned upside down, and it's an incredible ride. but parts of it are really, really difficult.
And you are the early 20s are such an impressionable time when you're just trying to figure out who you are. But now all of a sudden you have this machine behind you telling the world that you're Sporty Spice, you stand for girl power, you've got the tabloids telling your story on your behalf, whether it's true or not. How do you find your own identity throughout all that?
Well, I think, a saving grace of the Spice Girls is that everything that we said and the way that we looked and presented ourselves was true. We never set out to be a band that wanted to talk about girl power and equality, but because of our experiences in the music industry, we realized that we had to. We had a voice and we had to use it. We encountered some sexism quite early on in our career. We were told how boy bands ruled. They sold the most records, they sold the most magazines when they were on the front covers, and that a girl band could never do that. A girl band could never match that. And we weren't having that, Can you imagine? Everyone knows the Spice Girls now. There was no way we were going to settle for that. So that gave us fire in our bellies, and that spurred us on, and that gave us a meaning. It gave us our ethos. We knew we had to be a girl band for girls. We had to do this. We had to prove people wrong. So we set out to do that. Little did we know that we would be inspiring not only lots of young girls, but lots of young boys. We have an incredible following in the LGBTQ plus community, which kind of broadened our mission, really. We wanted to stand for equality for all. And then when the great thing about the Spice Girls is we are so different, not only our personalities, but our appearance, the way we present ourselves. And we were given our nicknames by a magazine here in the UK, by Top of the Pops magazine. And they just stuck, and we love them, and we've used them and became caricatures of ourselves. And I've never really had a nickname until I became Sporty Spice, so it's nice to have one.
But when the band finished initially in 2000 or so, you must have been a radically different person to the one who actually went into that whole process. How do you think you changed in that short period of time? How do you think you were different?
I think, it's all very complex, but I did in some ways lose myself. I think I did lose that essence of myself, that we spoke about, or I didn't know who that was anymore. And I think it was due to many things, the amount of pressure that we were under, that we also put pressure on ourselves. We knew we had a responsibility. We had very young fans. I think we were probably the first band to have fans of like 4 or 5. And that, that's heavy when you're in your 20s and you're growing up yourself, you're figuring out who you are, you're making mistakes like all young people do, but you can't really afford to because you're under the spotlight, you're being pursued by the media. So that was all quite difficult. I think being away from home, living on adrenaline a lot of the time as well, different time zones, working incredibly long hours, being away from your family and your friends. We didn't really socialize very often because we didn't have the time. We were with each other. Our working life was sociable, but we never let loose. We didn't have the opportunity to hang out with our friends, and that was tough. And not only did our lives change, but our families' lives changed. I only really realize as I get older, our siblings' lives changed. And I think when somebody becomes that well-known, a public figure, that it doesn't only affect that person, it affects everybody around them. And there's a kind of a recalibration that has to occur. And you kind of have to figure out who you are in this new world you inhabit.
Yeah. Did you have anyone in your orbit, you were around other celebrities, did you have people who would give you advice or would take you under their wing?
Do you know, we did actually. It was amazing because being in that position, you meet so many incredible people, and I met so many of my heroes. And it's funny because you say that, and I do it now. It's really funny when you meet older artists. Two people I remember meeting: Celine Dion and Lionel Richie. And I remember them, giving us advice, like really good advice, about, being careful and, staying true to yourself. And I remember Lionel Richie was giving us like financial advice, it's so funny to think about those things. But we did, we met people that, Elton John was, obviously remains a very good friend of Victoria and David. There are artists out there who know the pitfalls, and some of them had suffered them and kind of reached out to us. And, Brian Adams is a great friend of mine and, a wonderful person to have in the industry who completely understands everything. So yeah, there are lovely people out there who always have words of wisdom, which is something I like to do myself now. And I was lucky enough to meet Billie Eilish last year and just had a little chat with her. And I think even without realizing, I said a few things to her that really struck a chord. And she's spoken publicly about how that's made her think about what's happening to her and to try and be present and be in the moment. So yeah, it's kind of nice that I've had that experience from older artists and now I'm able to do that for younger people.
Yeah, and you speak about being in the moment. Were you able to be in the moment at all during that period? Were you able to enjoy it?
Excuse me. Yeah, do you know what's weird? It's like, as a young person, I think you are in the moment. You're so much in the moment that you don't think about the future. It's like you don't imagine the end of anything and everything comes to an end. Everything changes, So I kind of feel like a lot of my time in the Spice Girls in the 90s was so exciting, but so busy that, sometimes we didn't know what day of the week it was, what continent we were on. And although you're present and in that moment, it's so hectic that you can't take it all in. And yeah, I think that's the shame because it all seems to come to an end so quickly. And then it's, the next phase.
Yeah. And you've spoken very publicly about the eating disorders you had towards the end of that band's initial run and depression as well. Was the eating disorder, was that about trying to control something in your world, which was so out of control? Was that at the heart of that, do you think?
I think partly. I think it was partly, having control over something when my whole life was out of control or, not in my control at least. I think it was also guilt. I was very successful. I was earning money that I never imagined possible. I'm from a very humble background. So I think there was some kind of guilt in there with that. And also that guilt that I didn't deserve what was happening to me or I wasn't worthy of it. So I was trying in my kind of warped way to be worthy of it. And I felt like I had to be perfect. And part of that with the pressure of being in the public eye and of the media was that I had to look a certain way. And that made me very critical. I was kind of very policing myself constantly. So it's a very complicated thing to quite understand why it happened. But it did, unfortunately. But I've learned a lot from it.
Yeah. I mean, presumably, while you're going through all that, you're having to hide it from the public. When you go out in public, you have to put on the happy face. And when you're in interviews, how do you do that?
It's incredibly hard. It's exhausting. That is what it is. It's so hard. I mean, I think we all have to do it to an extent. You know, we all have bad days. And sometimes we just have to suck it up and get on with it, you know. But I think doing it on a world stage was really, really tough. I mean, there were times when I, you know, could barely get out of bed and I didn't want to leave the house. But then I had to go and, yeah, like you say, put on the happy face and be on a TV show. So that was really, really hard. But it makes you realise that we are so resilient, you know, and we are so capable. I think just in general, people don't give themselves credit for what we're capable of. You know, it's not always good because sometimes you do have to stop. And I think my biggest regret really was not having professional help sooner, because I think I could have, you know, I could have maybe got better quicker or not have had to have suffered so much if I'd been able to get help sooner. But I wasn't ready. You can't do it until you're ready. Yeah.
And did you have to help yourself? Was there no one around that you could turn to?
Well, you know, I think it's difficult for people around you because, you know, personally for me, and I know, you know, sadly, so many people suffer with this, but if you have an eating disorder, you're very secretive. You know, you don't want anybody to know, although it's very obvious, you know, obviously because it affects your appearance and your eating habits. You know, it's a sociable thing, eating. You know, people become aware very quickly that something's not quite right, but people don't know how to deal with it. And I think, you know, personally for me, I was embarrassed, I was in denial, and I didn't want to hear. You know, people did reach out to me and try and help me, but I didn't want to know. So that's, you know, the reason why, you know, it's hard for people and you can't get help until you're ready.
After the break, Melanie talks about going solo, the setbacks she suffered along the way, and what happened that made her so furious with Virgin Records. Welcome back to Humans of Music and my interview with Melanie C. While still a member of the Spice Girls, Melanie released her first solo album called Northern Star, which is where we pick up the conversation. And I've spoken to artists who have been in successful bands, not as successful as the Spice Girls, but successful bands nonetheless. And they've said going solo is really hard. Like, it's just hard to get people interested. Did you find that there was that, not so much a pushback, but it was just hard to generate that same kind of excitement?
Well, I didn't see it like that. For me, I was so desperate to do something on my own and to express myself as an individual. I love the girls and I love everything we've created. I think it's so special what we create together, but it's very much a collaboration. And I was really just itching to kind of search the depths of my soul and express myself on my own. So it was very liberating for me. And I also wanted to be seen as an individual. I felt a little bit stifled. I was frustrated that people didn't think I was anything other than Sporty Spice and there was nothing more to me. So I had a bit of an axe to grind, really, I suppose. So I was really excited and probably a little bit naive. And I was so lucky with my first solo album. You know, I worked with amazing people, some of my absolute idols I had the opportunity to work with. And I just enjoyed the whole experience. And it wasn't really until the album was released that I suppose I realised, you know, people aren't as interested of, you know, people from huge bands as solo artists as they are the bands, you know. But that's understandable, you know. I get that. It was something very, very different. And I can't complain about my first solo album because it was hugely successful.
Big success.
And and I had, even though I had some personal issues going through a lot of it was more when I was touring the record, when I was struggling. But yeah, it was an incredible and magical experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know you've spoken about playing the V Festival in '99 as a solo artist, and it sounded like a baptism of fire. What?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, totally. I mean, wow, talk about naive. So I had done like a warm-up gig at the Lead Mill in Sheffield, which is like a really, you know, it's a great little venue and like everyone's played there. It's one of those that everybody knows. And, you know, that had gone great. And then, yeah, I had V99 and I had a great band. I had a great set. I love performing live. And I just went out there gung ho. And I pulled a big crowd because people were curious, they were,
Of
I
course.
still have that to this day. When I play festivals, people are like, oh my God, it's a Spice Girl in the flesh. Let's go and check her out. And yeah, we started the set and it was incredible because I'd say it was kind of split 50-50. Half the people there were really loving it, but half the people did not want me to be there. And I had all manner of things chucked at me. I mean, back in the day, V Festival doesn't exist anymore, but back in 1999, it was a proper festival. It became a lot more pop oriented over the years. But at that time, like I was on the same bill as Manic Street Preachers and Faithless. I mean, these were like big festival acts, and then there's little me with my spiky hair, and I had all kinds thrown at me, and it was I think if I got through that gig, I can literally get through anything.
Yeah, nice. But you had people like Bryan Adams, who you mentioned, and William Orbit working with you on that first solo record. Very credible names. And was that validating in some way for you to have that acceptance from very credible artists?
Yeah, I just couldn't believe my luck. I mean, my collaboration with Bryan was really interesting because, it all happened so kind of organically. We bumped into each other in a hotel and, we became friends, and then he just called me up and it just all happened. I mean, he'd finished his record and then just said, hey, do you want to sing on this track? So it all happened very late in the day, and then it went on to be this huge hit. And, he's been amazing, and I have a lot to thank him for because he gave me the confidence, to go out on my own and do something as a solo artist, which is, I'll always be very grateful to him for that. And then, working with William Orbit, and he was fresh off producing Ray of Light for Madonna, which is one of my favorite albums of all time. Rick Rubin, who had written a lot of Ray of Light with Madonna. Rick Knowles, who'd written a lot of Ray of Light with Madonna, Rick Rubin, who is just one of the most incredible producers of all time. He's doing so much work with Red Hot Chili Peppers and, big part of Def Jam, and just such a dude. So, to work with these people was, it was really validating and exciting and kind of unreal.
And a big learning process?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm so grateful for all of the experiences I've had, from my first day in the studio with the Spice Girls and Matt and Biff. We all thought we could write songs and we had loads to say, but we were completely inexperienced, and we were kind of taught the craft by some of the best people in the business. So we've been really lucky.
But so you had that the success of Northern Star. Did that make the end of the Spice Girls less frightening?
Yeah. I mean, it was an interesting time because, Jerry had already left the band in 1998, and Melanie and Victoria were pregnant and they had their first children in 1999. So it kind of felt like the beginning of the end of the band anyway. So to embark on a solo career for me felt like the natural next step.
Was it frightening though? The end of the band?
I just poured water all over myself. That's a way of not answering the question, isn't it? Do you know what? Let me get a tissue. 1 sec.
Yeah, you're right.
I've got a piece of lemon in my glass and it just chuck the water at me. Right. So
I just asked, was it frightening?
I think I was ready. I think I was ready to be out of that glare of the spotlight. Being in the Spice Girls is amazing, but it was stifling as well. So I think I needed a different pace, and I needed space. I needed to go and explore who this person was as a solo artist.
Okay, but it wasn't smooth sailing after that with the follow up to Northern Star, Reason, being dropped by Virgin after that. Was that how do you did that bother you at the time, or were you just still very single minded and focused, or was that something that you had to come back from?
I was furious. I was furious that my relationship with Virgin Records ended because, this is the music industry. This is how cutthroat it is. If you think about all of the success that Virgin Records had had with the Spice Girls and all of the money that I had helped make for Virgin Records, and then Northern Star was very successful. But at the time, the 90s was an incredible time for the music industry. It was booming. We were selling millions of albums and they were making huge amounts of money. Recording budgets were huge, video budgets were huge. There was money everywhere. And then the digital age was dawning. And after the success of Northern Star, the projections and the expectations for my follow-up album were even bigger. And it was impossible to match that. One of the reasons I believe, it wasn't as strong as the first album. There was a big gap in between. A lot of that was due to the success of Northern Star. It meant I was able to tour it, across the world. So it took me a couple of years to finish the promotion of Northern Star. And then I had personal issues and we went into making this album. But, the fact of the matter is the expectations for the album with digital, downloading or file sharing or starting were unrealistic. And when the album didn't perform as Virgin Records had hoped, then they quite quickly got rid of me. And, and I thought that was a disgrace because... I think when you've invested so much in an artist and they have given you so much and that, you could do with a little bit more loyalty. So I was very, very angry about that, about not having the opportunity to to ride the storm, to ride the storm of everything starting to go digital and, also, an album not performing in the way that you'd hoped. But that's the music industry.
Yeah. But the thing is, you've been independent ever since. Like, you've really taken control of your career with Red Girl Records.
Yeah.
What, when you envisaged Red Girl and when you started Red Girl, did you have any things in mind about, right, this is how I'm going to do this. This is the right way to do things. I'm in control. This is what I want this label to stand for?
Well, I had options when I started working with Virgin Records. I spoke to my manager at the time and we were like, okay, we could try and get another major deal. We could maybe sign with an independent label, or we could go completely independent and self-finance. And for me, it felt like the most exciting option because it was so far removed from anything I'd ever had before. And I think probably because I was so disappointed in the way I was treated by Virgin Records that I wanted to shun that whole thing of, having to compromise, having to battle for a single choice or an artwork choice or something. I just thought, I want to hold all the cards. I'm going to do this. And I was really, really lucky. There's not many artists in my position. I'd been so successful with the Spice Girls that financially I was able to make my own record. So we did that and it was brilliant and it was a great experience. And again, a huge learning curve. But that in itself has a whole new set of issues that you have to deal with. So I love being an independent artist, but of course I miss that infrastructure of a major label and that that little comfort blanket that you have and that lovely big marketing spend that they have. It's a lot more scary when it's coming out of your bank account.
That's it. I think it's incredible that that I guess initial burst of success with the Spice Girls lasted for a couple of years, but you've been a solo artist now for more than 20 years. As you get sort of deeper into your career, how has what you want to do with your music changed? Has it changed as you've grown older?
I don't know whether it's changed. I think like everything, it's evolved. I've always been very much influenced by what's going on in my life. Usually that informs things lyrically, but then, musically, sometimes my emotions can inform that choice of which genre, what kind of sound I'm going to work towards, but also what I'm listening to and what's going on out there. And I started DJing a couple of years ago. And that's reignited my passion for dance music and house music. And in the 90s, I was a raver back in the day, and I'm just loving seeing all this rave influence coming back into music right now. So this album's been really, really fun because I kind of have had an experience of seeing audiences from a different perspective, being a DJ behind the decks. And so it's made me look at music differently. And I think that's really helped with the writing process. And just all of these experiences that I've had. I mean, gosh, from the theatre to, working on radio. And it all just helps me, become whoever artist I am at that particular time.
Yeah.
And I do feel very grateful. And I think working in all these different mediums just makes you better at what you do. And at the end of the day, I would always consider myself to be a singer. That's how I see myself. That's how I express myself. And I just think all of these opportunities have made me better at being that person that can express and connect with people.
Nice. And Jaxsta is all about giving credit where credit is due. Are there people that you would give credit to for helping you get where you are today?
Every single person I've worked with, on a professional level. I cannot take credit for all of my successes alone. There's absolutely no way. I've worked with the most incredible songwriters, producers, top liners, lyricists, mixers, remixers. It's never a one-man show. Personally for me, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for all of those incredible people. Management, PR, the list is endless. My musicians, my MD, my manager. There are so many people involved in that artist that you see up there on that stage. And then I have to say thank you to all the people who've wronged me, because they give you the inspiration to write so many of the songs. All those boys that chucked me and but I think, obviously on this platform, the unsung heroes, the songwriters, the people who are in the studios day after day, night after night, the mixers, the engineers, without any of these people, I wouldn't be here creating this incredible music that I'm so proud of.
Nice. Well, Melanie, thank you so much for your time. It's been great to chat with you.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed it.
And that's it for another episode of Humans of Music. A big thanks to Melanie for her time, and thank you for listening. This episode was mixed by Lachlan Mitchell from Parliament Studios in Annandale, and the incidental music and theme song were written and performed by Sam Lockwood. Please remember to subscribe to the Humans of Music podcast so you never miss an episode, and tell all your friends, and jump online and rate and review it. And remember, for the rest of the year, Jaxsta Pro is free, so if you make music or work behind the scenes in the music industry, head to jaxsta.com and sign up to become a Jaxsta Pro member. Until the next episode of Humans of Music, I'm Rod Yates. Thank you for listening.